Who you are is all you are, and how you act is how a customer will react. When you're 18 years old, 19 years old, 20, 21, 22, Sodfather's got his boots on the ground. He's working his way into this industry, and he's got to try and find a way to establish himself as different. Really different. And that's important because who you are is all you are when you see a customer, and how you act is how they will react. What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what I learned, okay? Because it means something very, very important, okay? I learned young because I was out there doing every quote. Like today, actually, as I say, all of the things of the internet, man, that's great. Young entrepreneurs, all the social media stuff, man, oh my God. We forgot one thing. It's that human element right in here. Right in here. Can we interact with each other? Can we get a feel? Can it feel good? And can we do something about it? So one of the biggest advantages I had, young onset entrepreneur, no money, having to do the 16-hour days like we talked about before, and then going to do quotes, is I learned really quickly that I had to be my best self and present myself in a way that people will want to choose me. Because when you look at it from an actual, just like a standard point of view, why would someone that's going to spend $3,000-$4,000, why are they going to look at some kid, inexperienced kid, why are they going to give him money over the 35-year-old guy that wears the industry on his face? Why would they go with them over the guy that's done it for 20 years, right? And that's a big thing. But as you know, okay, Sodfather, you might not know, but you're going to know because I think you got an inkling. Sodfather's a big pro wrestling guy, right? We're talking Hulk Hogan's, the Stone Colds, The Rock. I mean, all of the great professional wrestling guys, the carny stuff, the selling, there's a lot to be gleaned from that. And what that means is you got to project a little bit sometimes. There's a saying in mainstream media, fake it till you make it, right? That's what you got to do. So when you're 18 years old, how is someone going to choose you over the competition who is more experienced? And you could go with the cheapest price, but let me tell you something. Guys that always go to the cheapest price and always do jobs for the cheapest, they never last. So I learned pretty quickly, if I'm going to do this, I want to give my all, and I want to give a great effort, but I got to convince them. That I'm worth the money I'm saying, and that is the anatomy. What we're talking about is studying the anatomy of a sales pitch or a quotation. It's not even, if you believe who you are, and you are who you are, it's not a sales pitch, it's a presentation. There's a big difference there, right? A lot of guys these days make sales pitches and they hide behind their websites. None of them can sit and talk. But I'll tell you from my experience, I had to go out there and I had to fight. Remember, we're talking corrugated plastic signs getting ripped out of lawns. These signs are in the fields with the beasts, No one's doing anything. We're competing here. This is cutthroat stuff, and I'm a young guy, and I'm trying to get myself a little elbow room at the table. I want a sweet little taste. I want my beak wet, just a tiny bit. How do I do it against these monsters of the industry, these titans of the industry, these guys that have done it for so long? Well, you gotta believe in yourself, and you gotta say to yourself, Jay, are you doing it for the right reasons? And I said this, and now you look back to that job we lost $30,000 on. We finished the job, and we still did a good job, and they were very happy. We lost money on that job, but the fact that we did it was more important than walking away. So what are we doing? We're doing it for the love of the game. The reaction of that first homeowner way back on that first job I did, where she was so happy. She was so overjoyed, right? Her kids are running around, tears are in her eyes. She was absolutely knocked back by how lovely it was that she could have a yard for her kids to play, that she could watch from the kitchen table. Now you think about that and you go, I'm doing this for the right reasons. And so for me, I'm doing it for the right reasons. So now how do I communicate that? And I'm a pro wrestling fan, right? I know about cutting promos and this and that. So what you got to do, it's so simple. You got to say to yourself, you believe in the right things. And then when you go out there, you walk it and you talk it with the customers. The best anatomy of a good quote, a good estimate, the presentation is everything. If you can't act like you know what you're doing, no one's going to think you know what you're doing. And so the whole thing about fake it till you make it, that's a real thing. That is a real thing. And those that actually make it are people that are faking it from the core principles of wanting to do the right things. So yeah, I'm 18, I'm 19, I'm 20, I'm 21. I'm out there and I'm trying to develop a way for me to have an advantage over a 35-year-old that is doing the same thing. 45-year-old, maybe some silver-haired foxes, some 65-year-old slick guy, maybe he's got a fake tooth, maybe it's missing, and you hope that he shows up to a quote and his tooth is missing, but it doesn't happen that way. But you know what I'm saying? This isn't Mad Men. But how do you differentiate yourself? And so you believe in your core fundamentals. We're doing this for the right reason. And how are we going to talk to customers? And so I learned a few things, and these are the things I learned. I learned that going to jobs after a long day, like in that video a couple of videos ago, I learned that showed initiative. So, you know, I wasn't too big for I wasn't too big for the customer. Oh yeah, like we're too busy. We'll see you when we see you, to create demand. I went there, I did it. So I'm a young guy, because if you play it the other way, you're too busy to see the quote. All of a sudden you show up and you're the young guy. Or you're too busy and you're the young guy. Someone that's 45 years old is going to give you their money. No. You show up there and you go there and you convince them that what you're going to do is what you're asking for. Like, I'm going to do for you what you're asking, and I'm here and I'm ready and I want to get going on it, right? These are the things that matter. So I learned early on, I booked more jobs when I was going there as soon as possible. And the dirtier I was, the more I booked. The dirtier and later I did the quote, the more people started booking with me, with good old Jay, young Jay. Because it takes a certain guy at that age, when everybody else is out doing their thing or partying or whatever, at 18, 19, 20, it takes a certain guy to show up to a job. You know how many jobs on a Friday? I used to love Friday nights. Fridays at 8 to 9:30 was my prime booking day. That's when people are home from their week. They got their kids all figured out. They got their dinner done. And now they're focusing on, they can relieve the tension and do their thing. And I would go in there and I would always book on Friday nights, because all my competition was too busy with stuff that mattered more to them on Friday nights than the customers. And sometimes this was the only time before their family activities they could do. So I made it an effort in the anatomy of my quotations and the lessons that I learned, or the things and strategies that I employed. I made an effort to go and do quotes at the most inconvenient hours to me that were the most convenient hours to the clients or prospective customers. You know what that said? It said, I want the job. Now, you show up to that job. You show up to that quote after a long day of work or whatever. The biggest thing I learned, and listen, there's a time to talk. You know I love to talk. But when you're talking about doing a job, your biggest thing, and I learned this from Chris Krasinski, go and listen. Listen to what they want, and then write it down. But then demonstrate that you know what they're talking about. So you get there. Now you're already off to a positive momentum moment. You've showed up at an inconvenient hour by any societal standard because you want the job. So now all of a sudden you're saying, I want this. I'm up and I'm here to take a swing at the bat, right? Now, talk to the customer. It's as simple as that. Don't treat it so just black and white. How you doing? What a great night. Build some rapport. Talk about the weather. Talk about this or that. They're probably going to be like, hey, thank you for coming so late. And be like, you know what? Listen, yeah, I thought it would be important to come. I mean, it's a long day, but I'm happy to come do it. Like little things, not to pressure the client, but just little normal things like where you can lay the seeds of, listen, I want to do this job. And then you let them take you through the job. And the biggest thing I learned was when you're letting them take you through the job and it's a full house job, not just the front, not just the back, you stop the customer Because the client, the customer, whatever, first thing they want to do, they want to start with the front because that's what they see. Now, a lot of guys that think sales is, well, I'll just do what the customer says and take the notes and we'll work our way around. Here's the problem though. Your job as a landscape professional is to have a better understanding of how to look and progress through a job and a quote. When you let the customer lead like that, you're letting them have all their spotty here and there little ideas come out, okay? It can make for mixed notes. So typically if it's a whole house quote, if the customer, they'll typically want to start in the front unless they're nuanced. You say, no, we're going to start at the back. We're going to look at the access, and we're going to work our way forward. Because going to the back first, for you, as you're taking your notes, it's going to tell you how you can access the back, what you're going to do, and allows you to work your way to the back, and you can see the access, all of those things. But what you do when you take charge of the quote, when you take charge of it, is that you are now showing you can command the yard. Okay, it's like pro wrestling, it's like TV. Can you command a camera? Can you do this? Can you do that? Are you taking hold of it, right? So you're saying, I've been here before and I know what I need to do and I have agency in this. I'm doing this. So we're going to start back here because this is how I need to do the notes for what I do. And that all ultimately gives you this whole thing of experience. And the experience is so important. Right now, people are going, well, this guy's done this a little bit. He's done it a little bit. You know what I mean? So you do that, and now you're controlling the quote a little bit. You're going, we're going to start here. Now you look like you know what you're doing. Now you shut up and listen, and you let the customer tell you all their ideas, and you start taking notes, and you write down every little note because it comes back to building rapport after. They're telling you about this in the back corner. It's shaded. Now you got a tree over here and it's lifted with their roots and you're worried about the drainage, but you have to change the drainage because you have a sunken cement pad over here and all these things. So you write it down and you listen and you listen and you listen. Then you start working your way through. Now is your chance to demonstrate how to give a good quote. I always knew that I was always good at this. I would say, hey, how does what you want here affect what you wanted in that back corner? And let's talk about elevations and drainage because like from a common sense standpoint, are we going to, if we do this, you have this elevated, the tree roots and the branches, the tree roots are elevated, we can do this theoretically, you might like that, but I mean, conceptually you may like that, but theoretically the drainage is gonna, you're gonna have water sitting. So how do we mitigate that? By listening to the customer, taking the details, letting them work through it, but then coming back and now discussing it with them, you're demonstrating that you know what you're talking about. But really what you're doing is pulling the information that you have pulled from the information he's given you. But what you've done now is you've created a scenario where you and the client are now collaborating on the job. So now it's not, this is what I want, this is what I can do. This is what I want, this is what I can do. Now it's a synergy. Now it's going, I know you like this, but let's consider this. And then you're going, okay, well, let's do this, that. The minute you start collaborating with the client is the minute you start building rapport. And the minute you start building rapport, the minute you start building trust. So my biggest trick was back in the day was I would use this. I would say, you tell me what you want, and then I would come up with scenarios. Because I had done landscape jobs before, so I'm not a yes man. I'm going, these are these potential things. And sometimes they were minuscule, but the fact that I would mention them would then have the customer take a pause and go, yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what do you think? And now I'm saying, well, we could do this or that. Now we're in this together. The minute you get a client to be in it together with you, is the minute you have the trust of the client, okay? Because you've demonstrated that you have the same vision, but you have some foresight. Because a person wants to pay for someone with foresight that is going to do the job. That's why if you're young starting out, it's tough because the guys that are going against you that are 35, 45, they have foresight. So can you demonstrate that you have the foresight? That's the trick. That's the key. Now you're in it together. Now we're feeling like we're collaborating. Now you work your way through the quote. You know, you talk about a few things. You don't keep it so pragmatic. You know, you do a few things. You have some personality. And then maybe you say, listen, in my experience, I did a job like where, you know, this tree was elevated a little bit. And maybe the best thing to do was just to put a tree well around it with some mulch and then grade around that edging around the tree well, you know, just so that we could get where we want for the drainage. You know, we don't want to damage a tree, but, you know, some sort of form of talk that's going to demonstrate that you've been down this road and this and that. Something to build your total way of experience or lack of it. You know, you're going to demonstrate what you have at least, or try to show them you can get the job, or you can do the job, and that will help you get the job. So these are the things that I chipped away at. You know, walking the yard a certain way, controlling the yard, like knowing where the camera is, understanding that, you know, knowing where the customer is. When I'm taking my measurements, I'm looking intentional. I'm visualizing the spaces. I'm taking detailed notes. I'm asking intriguing questions, inquisitive questions. Everything I'm doing is showing that I'm engaged and I'm involved, and this is the most important project to me of my life. I know that sounds crazy, but you look at my reviews, and you look at all of it. It's been the way I've done it. And if you can get to anywhere close to that, you're going to be successful. You're going to be successful. Because the trick is, you just care about the customer. Just care. And then show you care by doing these things. So the anatomy of the quote is simple. The anatomy of the quote is, you want to give a good quote. It's called communication, care, and details. Be methodical, be intentional, and work your way around to whatever. Then as a young guy, I used to go back into the truck, right? Just like I used to say. I'd write out 2 quote sheets. You know, I didn't even have the carbon copy. I had to write out 2 sheets like a dummy. And I'd go up to the door, and then you're in that inevitable, you know, back in the day where you have to you're trying to book right there. Are they going to go with me? It's magical. It's like the first date. Are you going to get that kiss? And it's like they see it, and they're going to book with you. They might talk about it, or they want to get other quotes. Now, as you get into things, you can learn to talk about, you know, I don't know if you've been getting other quotes, but like, this is what I think and this and that. And then you might be able to get a customer to see if they're getting other quotes. Now, that gives you an idea of your competition or anything else. That's more of an advanced thing than the anatomy of a basic quote as someone starting out. But at the end of the day, you got to be intentional. You got to have communication. You got to have care. You got to have a commitment to some charisma and believe in yourself. And if you do that and you take a lot of notes, you're always going to put yourself in a good leverage position. Now, you're not going to book every job. But what you're doing when you're doing that is you're refining the ability to provide somebody with a great experience. And a great experience leads to jobs booked. And it leads to you feeling better about yourself and everything that you do. So the anatomy of a quote is a very long video. Let's not mince words. But these are the little things that matter when you want to go out there and consistently book. And the better you get at them, the better you get at staying in the industry. And so, hey, at the end of the day, you've got a guy that has a wheelbarrow that turned 18 this year, right? The fact that I even have a wheelbarrow that's that old tells you how long we've been doing this and consistently refining it. So if you can work those little things, like I did early, you know, I wanted to be the guy and I acted like the guy until I was the guy. But you gotta be, like, listen, you gotta get out there and get reps. And you gotta work at it. You gotta be a people person. And that's the anatomy of a quotation and an estimation, however you wanna call it. Be a good dude. Be a good girl. Be a good person. And just be great to people. And if you have a true heart, and people will feel that, and you go in there and you do the things you think you need to do it right, you'll always find success. It may take longer than you expect. Stick at it, keep grinding, keep grilling. That's all I got to say on that. Now listen, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, do all of those things. This one was a marathon, and I get it, but there is so much value in this. Guys, girls, everybody, thank you for watching. My name is Jason Dyler. I am the Sodfather, and we are the gold standard in green. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.